Welcome to Lead Stronger Longer, the podcast that empowers you to lead with purpose, personally and professionally, as well as in every aspect of your life. I'm your host, Stephana Johnson, and today we are diving into a critical discussion on three essential C's. The three essential C's of leadership today are consistency, competency, and congruency. These are principles that not only shape how we lead, but also how our legacy is defined. And this is a key way of how our cultures are developed within our organizations. So I love starting with stories. And this is a personal experience of working with a recent organization that brought me in to address a situation around a critical leadership conflict between the leadership and management. There's often a gap. There's often a communication gap, a reality gap, an understanding gap. And while the leader may have this vision, and the leader can go and say, this is what we want to create, then the managers go and try to implement and then lead change in a different way that a leader who's like the CEO would be doing, right? They have a different purpose than a manager does, although a manager is also leading. Usually they're leading a team in a different way and doing a little bit more of management of every task and product and actual end result. So when I was brought in to address this conflict, often what I say is, okay, so who's pointing the finger? Because when I see a finger being pointed in a direction, while of course I'm going to look in that direction that the finger is being pointed, there's always three fingers pointing back at the one doing the pointing, right? And so this is a concept that I really like to share with my clients. And when I go into an organization, I will always start with essentially educating the leadership team or the organization as a whole. If I am able to come in and talk to the whole organization, like in a keynote, so that we're all on the same page, unless I'm brought in just to work with the leadership team and they don't want the team yet to know that there's changes that are happening. It's more optimal to have an open and transparent change making that goes on. But when there's a situation where a leader is looking and recognizing that there is a situation and they know, okay, we need to make a change, and then they're pointing those fingers, what I will see is that those three fingers pointing back at the leader or leadership team are really not only the root cause for the challenges or the problems or the conflicts that are going on in the organization, but they are essentially what have created the situation, because the whole culture of an organization is going to be created by the leaders that started the organization originally. When I do a timeline on an organization and I look at, okay, so where did we first go off the rails? I will investigate that way. So I know what not only the source of the problem is, but then I go further back and look at the root cause. And it comes down inevitably to these three areas. Consistency of the leader, and I'll say leadership team as well, but it's always, oftentimes it is one particular person who is the leader and considers themselves the leader and shows up as that leadership role, whether or not they're doing a competent job and whether or not they're congruent in their day-to-day leadership. But the consistent behavior, the consistent actions of that leader are what you're going to start seeing within your organization. Even if you hire and bring in the most competent, friendly and excited to get to work. And so you bring them in thinking they're going to make a big change in the organization. But then they come in, and oftentimes what's going to happen is they are going to essentially learn behavior in that organization because of the culture that has already been created by the leader. So if that leader does not change, their consistent behavior is going to bleed into the new team members or managers that come in. And then you're going to see the culture of that organization continue to have the same problem. So I look at this with regards to when I was specifically brought in for conflict resolution, and I do it in a holistic way. I'm not just going to go in and put out a fire. I want to look at the whole experience of what's actually going on here. And I take time to actually assess and view what's really going on. I listen, and I listen to lots of complaints and lots of fault finding and finger pointing. And then I go and look quietly, right? I observe. And this is a skill that I think every leader needs to develop if they want to really be able to own their own power and how much impact they have on their organization in leading it, not just by their words, but by their actions. And this is where consistency comes into play in a big way, and how it overlaps with congruency and competency. You see, all of the managers and the team members, even if it's a small 4 or 5 member team, or even if it's 500 in the team, they are going to observe. And when they see little discrepancies and inconsistencies and incompetencies, whether they're lies, even little white lies, incongruencies, this now is training behavior in your managers and your leadership team, as well as the culture. So we can't just go in and try to fix it and say, everybody's now going to be honest. And because we wrote this mission statement, now everybody's going to be transparent and honest and trustworthy. And that's our mission. If that doesn't translate to the actual behavior of the leader and the leadership team, and it's not understood at a level that is deep enough to integrate, there will be no change that takes place. In fact, it will create enormous tension, and that's where we'll see the conflict happen. And then as really trying to adjust, it's all connected. You can't start to try to change one area without it affecting another area, both positive and negative. But you also have to give room for the change to take place. So another example is this. I always request that the leader be 100% honest, not only with themselves, but the key players. And that includes their own intimate relationships. And starting with their relationship with themselves. But oftentimes, if there's a partner or a spouse, that can definitely throw a wrench in things if the leader has not been honest and said, look, I recognize that there is a situation and I'm part of that situation and I am doing something about it, and creates the space so that that leader can then make the changes that need to be made. And that then allows the team members, including family members, to also have this new framework to look from and go, okay, so they do recognize that they're doing some things that are not optimal. And maybe they're not competent in this area, but they're working on it because they are the leader. And anyone who is here to lead, and know that you are here to lead, right? You are meant to lead. But maybe you don't have the skills to be a positive, successful leader right in this moment. Maybe you take off and you get going really well, and maybe you've got a big start button that's just like, yeah, you could create something amazing when you start, but that maintaining it and then actually taking it to fruition is a little bit more challenging. Or maybe it's just like you'd like to take on a problem and then fix it. And you're that kind of a leader that you'd like to do that, but you aren't a great starter. So we've got to work things out to where there is consistency in all those layers, and that there is enough communication within the team members, whether it's the leadership team or the management team or the concentric circle out from the self of the leader to the relationships, very close, intimate relationships, super important factors. They are big, big factors. Any business problem, you go to the root and you're going to find that it's actually a personal problem, right? 100% of the time, this is what I see in any organization I walk into. So being able to articulate that and communicate that, that is part of the process. And then that allows for all the accumulated charge and upsets that are inevitably in place when we've gotten to a situation where there is conflict resolution and someone external needing to be brought in to go in and repair leaderships and repair not only the individual leader, but the communication between the leadership team, whether it's a board and the leadership team or whether it's the leadership team and the management team. So that has to be repaired. And then we need to start seeing the consistent, competent, and congruent behavior and the words that are coming out of the individual's mouth. And so that's a process. And knowing that that's a process and that we can build in more predictable outcomes, then we can start seeing the change occur, and it becomes not just change, but transformation. So that's really a key factor of everything that I do. And I know that in the culture we live in 2024, August 2024 now, especially with the political culture, there's an enormous amount of stress. And this can often trigger a leader who has already high stress, they're high performing, they're really high driven, but low recovery, and they don't have the built-in time to go, okay, I've got to step back and get back in alignment. This has to actually become the most important thing that leader does, is they do take that time to build in that consistency of their own behavior. And sometimes that looks like getting rid of a lot of things that they've started to do to compensate for incompetency and incongruency. And there's oftentimes layers of lies. The thing is, you have to confront those lies. You have to confront it by putting in the truth and taking responsibility as the leader for what happened and the impact and effect that has resulted. So this is an important piece, because I think a leader understanding this and applying some of these, just a couple things, if you can get some of these nuggets, can totally transform an organization. One of the things that I saw when I went in, even the first week, was there one day and we handled one key piece, shifted to where the accounts payable was immediately responding and taking in revenue. And we were able to turn a complete situation that was almost a disaster. They were thinking that the company was that was it. The doors were going to close. But there was just these three things. There was inconsistency. Yes, there was incompetency, and there was incongruency. So when we went in there and we dialed those in with communication and then following up, we were able to transform something that was literally going to destroy the company from the inside out. And as a result, the ripple effect would be detrimental to many lives. And I think that, from my perspective, it's much easier to see that because I don't have all the charge that a leader or a company does. So having a consultant be able to come in and see that and hold a holistic perspective to know what can transform when you dial these pieces in, I think it's profound. So let me know how this lands and what you might take away from this in terms of becoming more consistent in your leadership, looking at where the level of your competency that you need to be as a leader, is that where it needs to be, and where can you improve? Not so much, okay, we're going to go and make you wrong and guilt and blame, but let's just look at where we can improve. And then showing up in all your relationships, all of your dealings in a congruent manner. And that dealing starts with yourself first, because remember, you have to lead yourself first. If you are unhealthy, stressed out, overworked, and you're demanding that of yourself, and as a result, you are diminished and you are showing up unhealthy, overweight, in chronic pain, that is just adding basically this. You're putting out that not only behavior, but permission for others to do that. That's the culture you're creating. And I think, there's this piece around, it's not even about the weight, because someone can be overweight and there's so much nonsense around it. But the fact of the matter is, you are not going to perform at your best if you are not vibrantly healthy and truly radiant in your own energy. And that's super important. When you show up that way, consistent in that way, that shows that you are consistent in your own habits and you're competent in even leading your own body and your own mind, that you're not reacting or snapping or having a temper tantrum on your team members or employees. These are the things that when you are, say one thing and someone does something that you've asked them to do and they do a great job, and then you say, yay, great, you did the great job, whatever your praise is for them. And then you, on the next moment, you are diminishing their performance. There's an incongruency there. And it's almost like whiplash for your team members. They're like, who is this person? They never know. It's like waiting for the shoe to drop. And this is where I just say to leaders, grow up, stop being a child, and let's grow up and lead stronger. So that was a lot there. I want to see how that lands. I'm interested in knowing your feedback. I like sharing these personal stories. When I say personal stories, this is me working in an organization. I'm never going to bring up organizations' names or details, but having, unless I can actually bring the leaders on and they can see it, we can talk about it before and after. But these are the pieces that I see show up. And it's a regular occurrence when I'm brought in to do a conflict resolution and teach on that. Again, whether it's a team of 3 or 3,000, I hear the same issues. And it always comes back down to this consistency, competency, and congruency. And it comes down to the 3 fingers pointing back. I always look for that. I always look for, okay, who's pointing the fingers? And then I go check them out. Not as like, okay, I need to invest, but there's information there. There's information there. And so that's something that I think is super useful as a leader to utilize. And I hope that helps. So thank you so much for joining me today on Lead Stronger, Longer. Remember, leadership is not just about what you do. It's about who you are. It's about how you show up consistently and competently and congruently in every moment. If you found value in this episode, please share it with someone who might benefit. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights on how to lead a life of purpose and impact. Until next time, keep leading stronger, longer.